All right, now to what has become my favorite New Year's conversation. I think it's our third straight year talking about the crystal ball that belongs to Sheryl Connelly. She's the chief futurist for Ford. I love that job title. And every year at this time, she puts out the results of a survey that peers into the future. Sheryl, very happy New Year to you. It's really great to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Before we dig into your new findings, I'm really curious about what you are learning about the impact of a pandemic on and what they do to your findings and your expectations. Don't they sort of turn this into a bit of a funhouse mirror?
That's a good way of putting it. You know, it's interesting. We found, we asked in 2020, so in the midst of the pandemic, when life would return to normal. And what we found was that about 40%, 44% of people worldwide said it'll take 1 to 2 years. We repeated that question this year, and we asked it a little bit more nuanced. But generally speaking, across the domains of work, retail, travel, recreation, we know about 10 to 15% of people say it'll never return to normal. And so I think that's wise. I myself fall under that camp. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Oh, yes. In fact, I think some people enjoy some of the changes that we've had to make, and we'll talk about those. But I want to start with, it was interesting that right out of the gate, no subtlety in the headline of your study. People right now are concerned with the future of the planet. This is no small matter.
Well, with good reason. I mean, 81% of people told us that that's among their top concern is climate change. And we think about the planet, not just, you know, in terms of sustainability, but let's talk about the population. We have 7.8 billion people worldwide. By 2050, that number could be at 10 billion. And the question is, how will we manage the resources to meet the needs of a population that large? And this is why Ford is investing so heavily in things like sustainability. We're all in on electric vehicles. We expect to spend $30 billion over the next couple of years to move our EV agenda forward, but also just to try to create more opportunities in zero emission vehicles. So I think, we start with there and we hope for the best, but there are some people that actually believe that we will eventually move to a future where we have to harvest from other planets to meet the full needs.
Well, in fact, that was one of the things you wrote. The question maybe is no longer how to sustain this planet, but how to exit it, which is fairly dramatic and dire.
Yes. In fact, 60% of people worldwide told us that they imagine that sometime in the future, we will actually have to harvest resources to sustain mankind on this planet.
Yeah.
Sobering thought.
It sure is. You also spent quite a bit of time talking to people about the future and concerns about food.
Oh, yes. Well, one of the things that we have to think about is how to make sure we feed a population of the size. And there are people who say that if we get to over 9 billion people, we can actually feed everyone, no problem, on the single condition that you, me, everyone in this country, everyone on this planet would have to become vegetarian. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I was raised on steak and potatoes. So I know that would be very, very hard for me to imagine. But 35% of the people we surveyed worldwide said that they believe that during their lifetime, the majority of people will move to a diet that's no longer animal-based in terms of protein. That the U.S., though, comes in a bit lower, only at 26%.
For so long, I think looked at baby boomers as because they were a lot of the decision makers in Washington, for example, are baby boomers, and we've seen that as being such an influential group. How do you now we look at what the millennials and Gen Z are telling you? Where do you apportion the influence now of where things are going? Who is leading in the decision making right now in our world?
Well, as a parent, I got to tell you, it's those kids. My kids have unprecedented influence on decisions we make in our household. But I love the cohort insights. The baby boomers help us understand why things are the way they are today. But when you look to the millennials, 40 to 25, and the Gen Zers, so we call them sometimes Zoomers, 25 and younger, they give us clues as to what we can expect in the future. And 1 in 3 tell us that they can imagine that children of today will not even need to learn how to drive. That They won't need their driver's license.
Astonishing, because you and I couldn't wait to get that piece of paper in our hands. I'm really curious about what you think the pandemic is doing to our ability to think about our future. Last year, you and I talked a lot about the epidemic of loneliness going on in the world. I don't know that another year of everybody working in isolation has changed that. People are changing now their expectations of what the workplace is. You were telling me a little while ago, you kind of like the freedom of being able to work from home now. So what do you suppose the future of work looks like?
So it's interesting because, we talked about it. I don't live far from Dearborn, but my commute can range anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on the time of day and the weather conditions. Worldwide, we asked people, did the changes brought about because of COVID make your work-life balance better or worse? And 32% of them said it made it better for them. In the United States, that number was a bit lower, only at 26%. Now, bear in mind, there's a good number of people that said there was really no change. But we do think that, we're finding new and different ways to collaborate. The tools that have accelerated, the things that Ford has done to make it easier for people like me and my teammates to work collaboratively, even though we're in different locations, has been really impressive. And the pace at which it's changed, it actually makes us think that change in the future could happen in a way that's much more rapid than we anticipate.
Yeah. Lastly, Sheryl, when this isn't exactly part of the survey, but when I look back through the history of civilization, I think that it's generally fueled by optimism, best fueled when there's a great deal of optimism around, and that we can think about the possibilities ahead of us. I'm wondering how much optimism you think people are finding right now, or is it fair, when you're talking about, the future of the planet and in the middle of a pandemic that we can't quite seem to get our arms around, how much optimism is out there, and how much of a challenge is just sort of the malaise of pessimism?
So we have looked at some numbers like this over the years, and before COVID, 66% of people worldwide told us that they were overwhelmed by changes taking place in the world.
Yeah,
and in the context of COVID, we thought that number would skyrocket. It didn't. It only went up to 69%, which was kind of surprising.
Yeah.
My takeaway from that is that people are becoming accustomed to disruption, a little bit of chaos, volatility. In other words, we live with this low-grade fever of anxiety. However, I am a true optimist. And I will tell you again, as I've told you before, no one can predict the future, but I do believe we can create it. We can drive it in the direction that's most beneficial to all of us. And that only comes about if you're optimistic about what's possible. And that's what our trend report's all about. I hope your audience will check it out in detail at fordtrends.com. But we're having these discussions now. If you're worried about having to become a vegetarian, if you're worried about the shortage of water, you're worried about traffic jams in the sky, well, we have to start planning for that future. And this is meant to create that dialogue.
Yeah, so right. Well, I'll recommend it. FordTrends.com. Check it out. Sheryl, it's always good to spend this time talking to you. Hopefully back in person again real soon, but have a happy new year.